All righty. So, the 7 assemblies of Revelation, when we did this, it took us 7 weeks to get all the way through it. And look who just showed up. Well, I'll be darned. How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
So, it took us 7 weeks to get through it. Yes, it's 32 pages. We're not going to do 32 pages today. Why are we doing this? It's because in order for us to study Ezekiel, we have to be able to understand some things that happen in Revelation. In order to understand what we're going to study in Revelation, we need this information in order to support that. So, in fact, the first verse of Ezekiel is going to take us to the 4th chapter of Revelation. But before we start, let's talk to our Elohim, and then we'll take a look at pieces of this. Master Elohim, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to study your word. And we ask that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so that we can see, hear, and especially understand what your word tells us. And we thank you for it all in the name of Yahshua. Amen. All right, so the 7 assemblies of Revelation. This is the 7 assemblies of Revelation. You know, we look at it, well, these are the 7 letters sent to the 7 churches and all this stuff. And these are actually letters that are studies on 7 different spiritual states of being. These letters are very personal and intimate letters from Elohim to us today. We'll note that it's Yahshua who is talking, but it's Elohim talking through Yahshua to Yochanan. So Elohim is speaking to us through his word in the book of Revelation, which is an important concept for us to understand, that Elohim speaks to us through his word. So when we go to Scripture and we open it up, Elohim is talking to us. But within the Scriptures that we read are terms that are used, are terms that we can relate to in our finite mind. And this is all part of the question, why does Yahweh need a throne? Why is there a chariot mentioned in Ezekiel? So this is part of building that foundation for us to be able to understand the bigger picture when we get to it. So, like we say, today it's a personal letter to all who believe. Now, we've talked about mitpalel, and we took the word Adam, and we broke the word Adam down. And we find that when we spell out the Aleph, and we spell out the Dalet, and we spell out the Mem, that we can drop the first letters down, and again we have Adam, but what's left over are the letters that comprise the word mitpalel. Now we're talking about an assembly. If we say that we as individuals are an assembly, then within the assembly we have to have mitpalel. Mitpalel means it's the ability to judge, it's the ability to discern, it's the ability to communicate with Elohim. So mitpalel is a very important concept that we have to understand that is built within our spiritual DNA. Now, we go to page 2. Yeah, we're just following the highlighted parts, and I guess that's one that didn't quite get highlighted. Some of them might miss some highlighting. I say I ran out of the yellow ink, I think, 3 times, and finally it was kaput. So, Elohim has breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, the Word and the Spirit. And when we read this verse within Bereshit 2:7, we'll find that within the Hebrew of that verse, we understand that it was the Spirit of Yahweh Elohim and His Word that were breathed into the nostrils that gave this mound of dirt life. So these two things are housed within the tabernacle of our assembly, which is the flesh. And within the flesh, we contain the Word and the Spirit. Now, I said mipalel is the ability to judge, discern, and communicate with Elohim. In this, we have a Beit Din. Okay? This is the ruling component of an assembly. So within us, we have a ruling component of an assembly, the same as you would have at a synagogue. You would have the Beit Din that makes decisions and passes the information on for that to be implemented. So the Word and the Spirit, in these two things, we have the teachers, and the flesh is the student that has to learn. So if we consider these components, then we can say that we are the assembly. And when we look at the 7 assemblies spoken about in Revelation, then we can say that it is speaking to us as individuals as to how to fix spiritual states that we might be in, or how to guide us along certain spiritual paths to make sure that we are on the right track. Now we see in this first verse of, this is the letter to Ephesus, that there's a messenger involved. The messenger is one who carries to humankind the instruction of the Word, as well as the instruction of Yahweh Elohim and the blessings of Yahweh Elohim. And we find this within the word malachah. Malachah is the Aramaic word. Malachim is the Hebrew word that we use for messengers. We erroneously use the word angel. Angel is a Grecianized term that really doesn't, it takes away from the meaning of what's going on. These are messengers of Elohim. They're not angels of Elohim, because when we start to think of angels of Elohim, then we start to carry on with all kinds of really strange thoughts. The little babies with the wings shooting the little arrows. These are messengers of Yahweh Elohim that come to us. They bring us information, and at times they take information back into the realm of Elohim. So it's very important that we understand this. We can confirm this when we look at Jacob's ladder. This is Bereshit 28:12, that we read, "And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven." And then it says, "And behold, the messengers of Elohim ascending and descending on it." So what we see here is that the realm of humankind, the earth, is connected to the realm of Elohim via this ladder. And we studied Jacob's ladder in some kind of detail not too long ago, but we saw the messengers that ascend and descend from it, that they bring messages up from the earth, and they also bring messages to us from the realm of Elohim, that through this messenger system, through Jacob's ladder, a relationship is established between the two realms based on the word ascending and descending. Everybody with me? Like I say, we're just going over the highlighted points. If you'll take time to read this all the way through, it'll explain it in a lot more depth. But again, this is important stuff for us to have as a foundation for when we look at the first 3 chapters of Ezekiel, so that we will be able to understand from the point of view that this is speaking to us and giving us direction. Now, so we understand that only by establishing a relationship with Elohim through his word can we truly have life. It must be the word of truth, and it must be observed in truth. And this is very important, and it's kind of a no-brainer that if we read the word of truth and we read it according to what it means, we have to observe it in truth. We cannot get sidelined by the takanot of the rabbis or doctrines that go contrary to it that the church fathers have brought into the picture. And like I've said many times before, it's our responsibility individually to study the Word and understand what it means, that regardless of who is teaching you, you always have to go back and make sure that what you're being taught is in accordance to the Word. And if you find that what you're being taught is not in accordance to the Word, then you have a responsibility to go to the person that has taught you this and say, hey, I found this, and what you taught goes contrary to what the Word says. And that person has a choice. He can either explain why he said what he said, or she said what she said, or they can say thank you and then make the correction the following day. Not being like some of the people that I've encountered that I've actually gotten a response back, well, they don't need to know. So, and that's a scary thing. So, the word of truth is necessary in order to have a relationship with Elohim. And we get this through Yahshua, who is the Word full of grace and truth, full of undeserved favor and truth. And within the Word, we find that we really have the undeserved favor of Elohim because of what Yahshua did, that in becoming the vehicle of sacrifice to restore a covenant between humankind and Elohim, that he removed this curse of death because of sin, and now we can make teshuvah and walk with Elohim as opposed to, well, being taken outside and stoned because we made the mistake first off, right off the bat. So, now we can confirm this further at Bereshis 1:1 in the last 14 Hebrew letters of the verse. Again, 14 is the ordinal number of the nun, which means life. And within this phrase, we're going to find that we truly receive life from our Elohim. The phrase itself says, the Aleph and the Tav, Hashamayim, the heavens, Va'et, Haaretz, are connected to Haaretz, the earth. And what we've just said, how are they connected? They are connected through Va'et. That in this we have the word for and, which means to connect. But we also see that the Aleph and the Tav became flesh in order for this to happen. So, if we are able to confirm Revelation 2:1 regarding the Malachah and their relationship both to the assembly and to Elohim, it is the word that connects the two realms. The messenger is not only the word that resides within us, but as we'll read in Bereshis 2:7, it is also the spirit of Elohim, the Ruach of Yahuwah, that resides within us as well. Okay? This is what allows mitpalel to come into play. We're able to judge and discern based on the word and the spirit within us. We're able to communicate with Elohim through these two things. Now, the one speaking is Elohim, like we've said. He's speaking through Yahshua, just as he did in the beginning. Elohim is speaking through the word. And this makes sense as Yahshua is seated at the right hand of the Father, and this is a very important thing, that the right hand is not the hand of judgment. The right hand is an attribute of mercy and his redemption, deliverance, and restoration. As long as Yahshua is seated at the right hand of the Father, then there is an opportunity for humankind to make teshuvah. When that changes, then it will be the day of Yahuwah. And at that point, it's too late for changes to be made. So the right hand is not a place of judgment. It is a seat of undeserved favor and intercession. And these two attributes are the reason that we have the 7 letters sent to the 7 assemblies in Revelation. Now we read, who holds all things. That he holds all things is that he holds the truth, Elohim's power and ability, and thus he's able to make intercession for us. We said in a study a few weeks ago that the only one other than Yahuwah Elohim that could make changes to the Torah is Yahshua. And Yahshua said very clearly that until heaven and earth pass away, nothing will change, not the Yod or the Kotz of a Yod. And in this, we hold all things, that this is a representation of the Yod itself. Now, 7 stars and 7 menorahs. Now, we have the number 7 that represents the Zion, which is Elohim's protection and nourishment that we find in Mashiach, that we find in his word. The 7 stars in his right hand, these are messengers, those who ascend and descend, carrying blessings and instructions from the realm of Elohim to the realm of humankind. These represent the importance of our relationship with Elohim through the right hand, who is Yahshua. Everybody with me? Okay. The right hand, where Yahshua sits, represents redemption, intercession, undeserved favor, and love from Elohim through his word, Yahshua, both as a concept, the concept of Yahshua, okay, and as the Redeemer, the physical form of Yahshua, who was the vehicle of sacrifice, who came and taught. What is the concept of Yahshua? Well, we read about the concept of Yahshua all throughout the Tanakh, that even the Torah itself is called Yasha, that it is the redemption, deliverance, and restoration of Yahweh. That is the concept that we receive this from Elohim. And we all know what the physical form of Yahshua is because we read all about him in Brit Hadashah. Now, the 7 menorahs represent the 7 assemblies. And this is Revelation 1:20. The Vav gets its light from the Zion, and we see a picture of the necessity of receiving light from Yahshua, who is the light of the world. We not only receive light, but we receive fire, the Ruach of Yahuwah. Now, it goes on to say, he that has ears, let him hear. And he says this several times throughout his discourse to the 7 assemblies. Hearing is not simply listening. Hearing is putting into application, taking action on what is learned, given, taught, etc. And in this, he who has the ears, let him hear, we consider the Shema. It says, Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah our Elohim, Yahuwah is Echad. Hear, the word hear is Shema, and we've said that it means more than just to hear, and here it is outlined. It means to perceive, to pay attention, to consent, to be in subjection, to diligently consider and discern, to proclaim, to be content, to understand, to be a witness. One that's missing up here is also to obey. So the Shema, when we read here, the Shema is the same word in Aramaic as it is in Hebrew. It means these things as well as simply listening. It's not simply to listen, it's also to take action. So hearing, therefore, and especially in these first 7 verses, is to make an all-encompassing, life-changing act of love and reverence to Elohim by entering into a relationship. And it takes action in order to enter into a relationship. It doesn't just happen. So a relationship with Yahweh Elohim is like any other relationship. You have a relationship with your husband or your wife. It takes work on the part of both parties in order for that relationship to flourish and to mature and to be a good relationship. And we should put the same effort, if not more effort, into our relationship with our Heavenly Father than we would with anything else. The word is defended through discourse and trial. Check the validity of those claiming certain credentials. Okay, so what Ephesus was doing is they were very careful to make sure that everything that the word said was carefully followed. Anybody who came to teach, they made sure that that person was okay to teach. They checked that person. But verse 4 of this assembly of Ephesus says that Yahshua has something against them. They have left their former love. There is talk and there is testing, but there is no more walking and doing. The acts of love and compassion and caring for one another has been replaced by lip service, in other words. Scripture says we cannot simply be hearers of the word, we must be doers as well. And do with as much zeal as we have for keeping the true word of Elohim. The first love is loving Elohim. We love Elohim by loving one another as we love ourselves. We are made in the image and likeness of Elohim. To love our neighbor, to love ourselves, Elohim. To love Elohim according to Yahshua and the Shlachim. To love Elohim is to keep his commandments. Shlachim means apostles, his emissaries. Now, in the Ephesians, as he's going to talk about it again, he talks about the Nicolaitanes. And the Nicolaitanes is something that he says he hates. Nicolaitanes allowed pagan beliefs to be intermingled with the word of Elohim and the teaching of Yahshua, defiling the true meaning of the word of Elohim and creating a different gospel, a different message, different than what Paul, Peter, and Jude warned about. In fact, in Galatians, Paul says, should an angel from heaven or any other person teach you any other message other than what we have taught you, let the person be accursed. Which makes it kind of an interesting thing, and I'm not picking on anybody, but we have Islam, where the angel Gabriel appeared to the prophet Muhammad and recited, that's what Quran means, recited this Quran to Muhammad, which within the Quran, it goes contrary to both Torah and Brit Hadashah. It's a different message. And then we have another angel that appeared to Joseph Smith that told him about some gold tablets that turned out to be the Book of Mormon. And if you've ever read the Book of Mormon, you'll find that it's another gospel that goes contrary to what Torah has to say, but it also goes contrary to Brit Hadashah. So, should an angel from heaven or any other man preach any other thing? Yahshua said there will be prophets and teachers that come along that will teach you things that go contrary to the word, to deceive many, and many will fall away. So this is a very important thing to pay attention to, this thing about the Nicolaitanes. Yahshua called this type of action the unpardonable sin. It's sin against the Ruach of Yahweh Elohim that concerns those things that are evil, that are called good, and the things that are good that are called evil. Yahshua states in verse 6 that he hates these types of things, and he praises the assembly for also hating these things of the Nicolaitanes. Hate is a very strong word. So imagine if he uses the word hate, that we say that Elohim is speaking through Yahshua, and Elohim is love, then we can gather that this type of thing is a very, very serious thing that we really, really need to pay attention to. Now, this warning is given to correct the weakness. Yahshua says, remember from where you have fallen and repent. Do the former works. So teshuvah, we look at where we are, and we look at where we've come from, then we go back and correct the wrong steps taken in order to get back on track. There is a lot of stuff, there's a lot of junk in the trunk, and we all have a lot of junk in the trunk. And the more we study to show ourselves approved, the more junk in the trunk that we find that we've held on to for years that goes contrary to the word. Either we've picked it up along the way from rabbinical takanot, I say Messianic, the Messianic, takanot is rabbinical decrees. But The Messianic movement picked up a lot of stuff along the way from the Talmud and applied it as this is the way it is, this is what the Bible says, when the Bible doesn't say that. So we have a lot of rabbinical decrees that we have to work through and rifle out. And it's the same thing with doctrines of the church. There's a lot of things in those doctrines of the church that we really, really need to take a serious look at and move them, remove them, or adjust them to where they fall in line. You know, some of them are very close, but they're still not what they should be. So that's something that we need to be aware and be able to make teshuvah. First of the 7 messages, each with its individual instructions and warnings about how to grow in a relationship with Elohim through his word. So that was the relationship, or the message given to Ephesus, and that's that spiritual application for us. Next is the assembly of Smyrna. This gives us insights on how to overcome troublesome times. Smyrna was a very persecuted assembly, very persecuted congregation. But Elohim through Yahshua says, do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. The one saying this speaks the truth and has the power and the ability to help those who he is speaking to. And that's something that we really need to get a grip on, that yes, trials and tribulations come up. We're not persecuted anything near like what Smyrna was, but we do have problems in life that are a form of persecution. But we have to say that the one speaking is Yahweh, and he's speaking through Yahshua in order to tell us that he can help us along the way. So this is a very important thing, that the most powerful entity in existence and beyond speaks to us through his redemption, deliverance, and restoration in order for us to be pulled out of whatever things are burdening us. So it's a very important thing to think about. Elohim states that his word stands forever, that he renews our strength, that he will help us, and that he will bring us justice, that he will be a light to the Gentiles, and that he will redeem Israel. Now we say Israel means that Elohim prevails, that those who recognize that Elohim is greater than they are, he will help them. They will overcome. Now, we look at Isaiah 41:4 that says, who has wrought and done it? He that called the generations from the beginning, I, Yahuwah, who is the first. And it's interesting that if we read this from the Hebrew, it says, who is the first and with the last and the same. At this point, it's not the first and the last, but he is the first with the last. And this is something that points towards Yahshua as the vehicle of sacrifice. What does it mean? He is saying that I am the Aleph, and there is nothing else before me. I am eternal and can do all things, and I am with the Tav, this the vehicle of sacrifice that will restore the covenant, and there is nothing after this. We are the same, is what he's saying. So he is the first. He is the beginning who spoke everything into existence, but right now he's with the vehicle of sacrifice because the vehicle of sacrifice hasn't come yet. But he's telling us that the vehicle of sacrifice will be the last opportunity to believe and receive. That we talked about helical time. Yahshua, believing and receiving Yahshua, is something that we have to do before that screw bottoms out into the wall. Okay? I was thinking about this, and we talk about the end of days, the last days, the end of days, and the apostles and Yahshua talked about the last days, and we read this all through Brit Hadashah. What does that mean? And we all say, well, it's talking about the last days that are coming. Literally, they were in the last days. And what do I mean by that? They were in the last days of the temple when the temple would be destroyed, the Levitical system of sacrifice would be put to an end, and there would be nothing other than Yahshua to bring redemption. These are the last days, and in the last days, they had to understand this. This is why the temple was destroyed, not in 69.